Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
So good, so good, so good.
New spring arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Rag & Bone, Marc Jacobs, Free People, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. My guest today is a state lawmaker, Representative Brian Turner, who is a Democrat from Buncombe County. Thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited.
We are recording this in his office at the Legislative Building after a very quick legislative week. Usually Legislative Friday is Thursday, but I believe this is Wednesday. As we record this, legislative time is really
It's elastic.
Yes, exactly. So Representative Brian Turner, like I'd mentioned, is a Democrat from Buncombe. He was first elected in 2014, served in the House, then took a term off, then came back. So my first question is, or two, I guess, is why did you leave and why did you want to come back here?
Okay, so I was first elected in 14, started serving in 15. And at that time, my daughter was like 7. And so at the end of 4 terms, it's like she's 15. And I was kind of thinking about all the birthdays and volleyball games and recitals that I had missed by having to be here in Raleigh. Mm-hmm. And I said, she only has a couple more years at home before she goes away to college. I really want to be here for those last couple of years. I've served 4 terms. I've done some good. Mm-hmm. I feel like I can take a break. We had redistricted, and so my Republican-leaning seat was now a Democratic-leaning seat, so I felt safe to retire so that somebody else could take over, which was then Representative Lindsay Prather, and enjoyed my time away. But after Representative Caleb Rudow decided to run for Congress, the leadership reached out to me and Governor Cooper reached out to me and asked me if I would consider returning. And I was like, well, my daughter's getting ready to go to college now. So yeah, I'll come back. Let's do this. And to be able to bring some experience to the delegation, because Lindsay and Eric would both been in 1 term, I felt also be very helpful, bring some consistency and some of that. So, and I'm glad I'm back.
And you remember when Representative Tricia Cawthon was a Democrat, I believe.
Yes, I served with Tricia when Pat McCrory was governor.
Right.
So
right.
And Tricia was always very. I tell you, one thing was great. I mean, other than on a personal level, she used to bring stuff to caucus from time to time on food and things like that, and that was always kind of nice. Didn't help me with my freshman 15, but I appreciated the snacks.
So who were the House Democratic leaders? So before, current leaders, Robert Reese, if people don't know, and then it was Darren Jackson before that. Was it Jackson for a while? Or
it was Jackson. We had Larry Hall.
Oh, right.
And then Jackson, Reeves, I think that's what it was.
And then Reese for a couple rounds now.
Yeah.
And then your drive out, where do you actually live in Buncombe County?
So we just moved back in December. We now live in town of Biltmore Forest. And it is, I want to say, according to my mileage sheet that I've given in for my mileage reimbursement, I think it's 247 miles from my house to here.
It sounds very storybook, Biltmore Forest.
Biltmore Forest is an actual municipality. It's about 1,100 households, about 1,300 people, and it's basically wedged in between the city of Asheville and Biltmore Estate. Mm-hmm. So it's a small little town.
Well, here we have the Biltmore Forest contingent listeners maybe on Under the Dome, or they should listen if they don't already. So your professional experience, I was pulling this from your campaign website. You worked at Fuddruckers, Mills Manufacturing, you're a TV producer, and then UNC Asheville. Mills Manufacturing, this is family business, is that right?
Family business, yeah.
Okay, and then Fuddruckers was what, high school job or after?
Yeah, Fuddruckers was my first job in high school, working fry, or started bussing tables, worked my way up to the fry grill, and then moved on over to the regular grill and did burgers and chicken sandwiches and stuff.
So how does that, all your professional path, lead to politics?
Oh, it doesn't. I mean, for me, really, it was during my time at UNC Asheville. And so I started working there, I think it was like 2012, 2011, 2012. And it was right after the Republicans had sort of had flipped the chambers and were enacting new budgets. And I remember the Chancellor Ponder, Ann Ponder, giving kind of the state of the state speeches or talks every year. And for a couple of years running, it was, well, our budget cuts weren't as bad as other institutions, and we should consider ourselves lucky. And I was like, well, wait a second, like that's just not the direction we should be going. And so I was like, who's in charge of this? And it turned out it was the General Assembly. So then I said, well, I'm going to run for the General Assembly. And I didn't know what precinct number I lived in. I mean, I had to check my voter registration. And that's what got me going. Was UNC Asheville was a great university. The kind of the liberal arts jewel in the system crown. And I thought we could do better by it.
I've had some freshman lawmakers on Under the Dome before, and I've asked like, what did you think it would be like here, and then what did you learn once you were in office, and it's very different than what people expect. What was that like for you? I mean, you're more than a decade out as far as when you decide you want to be part of this, and then realize what I guess is it more positive or negative or a mix of both of what you find out with the actual, like when it comes to lawmaking, when it comes to, balances of power and just how things work?
Well, I think that a lot of legislators put too much emphasis on actual legislation. A big part of, again, when I came in, I was in the super minority with Republican governor. And so for me, and I did have some success getting bills passed, working with people like Kyle Hall, people were John Hardister, some others. But for me, it was, okay, I'm not going to really be able to get the things done that I want to do. What other levers can I pull? And so I really focused on constituent services. How can I get those potholes filled? How can I make sure somebody's getting their unemployment checks? And so that to me has really almost outweighed the bill passing. Like that's just part of it. But then, we're in like the low single digits of legislation introduced that gets turned into law. So if you're hanging your hat on getting a bill passed, the chances are you're probably not going to see a ton of success. And so you got to figure out, how do you serve your community differently? And so that's kind of what I focused on. And being able to, when someone sends you that email or letter, they say, hey, thank you, I got my unemployment straightened out and I didn't get evicted. You're like, hell yeah, that's a win.
Yeah.
And that directly impacted somebody's life to the positive.
So what we were talking about, people and just difference in those that are here, since when you left, it was, of course, it's still Senate Leader Phil Berger leading the other chamber, and the balance between, Republicans and Democrats. Republicans still have control. How is Speaker Destin Hall, who's new, different than previous Speaker Tim Moore, who's now in Congress? How has that changed the House dynamics? Just how, or is it really that much different from where you sit in the chamber?
Well, I'm still sitting at seat 120, which is where I've been since day one, which I love. But I think when you look at when Destin was Rules Chair. And I think that kind of gives some insight to how he's going to be a speaker. He's very efficient, and I appreciated that. And so I think as speaker, we've had some sort of false starts or late starts, but that's nothing new to Destin, but or Speaker Hall, excuse me. But I think he's very efficient up there, and I think he's got a little sense of humor, which I think is good and can bring some levity to it. But I think he's doing a good job. Yeah, I mean, I don't see him around the building as much as I used to see Tim. So he should get out and walk around and shake hands with us.
Well, Hall has the end of the House session on Wednesday, during points of personal privilege, I feel like everyone had a birthday, and Hall at the end was like, well, since we're talking about it, he has a really young baby who just turned 3 months. We're going to.
Well, I was going to say, and I think that's an important thing is that the speaker's the speaker, and the speaker's important, but I think it's also, you got to remember, the speaker is a person. There's the office of speaker, but then there's Destin Hall, and he's a human being, and he's a father, and he's a husband, and he's an attorney, and he's a human being. And I think sometimes you lose sight of that because he is up there playing kind of air traffic controller, and he is killing your bills or letting them live. But sometimes you remember the humanity of people.
Air traffic controller is a good way to describe it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk more with Representative Turner about a lot of what went down at the legislature this week, and then our picks for headliner of the week. We'll be right back.
It's crunch time at work, and you need to bring wings to your workday. Visit redbull.com/gettingitdone and answer a couple questions about your work style to get a Spotify customized playlist tuned to your productivity. Plus, score a can of Red Bull on us while you go from to-do to done. And remember, Red Bull gives you wings. Supplies are limited. Terms apply. Visit the website for more information.
Pros, just because something on the job runs out doesn't mean you have to. Order it on the Lowe's app. My Lowe's Pro Rewards members get free same-day delivery on eligible orders over $25. Get the fasteners, hardware, or tools you need to keep the job moving. Order by 2 p.m. and get eligible in-stock items delivered right to your job site by 8 p.m. Members get more at Lowe's. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Subject to availability, restrictions, and terms at lowes.com/shipping terms. Subject to change.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with Democratic Representative Brian Turner of Buncombe County. Before the break, we talked a lot about Turner and about his perspective on when he was in the House before and in the House now. So I want to talk about the now part. And this past week where, so lawmakers had been out for a month and they came back, and the biggest priority for Republicans in control was to override Stein's vetoes. He's vetoed 14 bills. There's one they weren't going to take up at all, this squatters bill that the Senate had added some stuff to, and then they just sent a clean bill back to Stein. So that's out there. That was maybe like way down on the list of big news of these 2 days. The Senate did everything in one day on Tuesday. The House spread it out just a little bit, which was nice from a reporting standpoint, where it was Tuesday and Wednesday. So there were 8 vetoes totally overturned that have now become law. The Senate overrode 12 total, but the balance is different because there aren't enough votes in the House with House Republicans to override a veto unless they have help from at least one Democrat, which actually happened on some bills. You are not one of them. So I don't know what, I know everyone says they don't want to talk about caucus, but the actual meetings, but what's that dynamic on the Democratic side with maybe you knew, some of your colleagues in your caucus were going to vote a certain way because they voted for the bill, when it passed the first time and might again, versus kind of that pressure and your constituent pressure, your party pressure. What was it like for you on that side of the aisle?
Well, I mean, I think, I'd say the Democratic caucus is obviously different than the Republican caucus. First off, we have fewer members. But secondly, I think that we are more inclined to listen to and be able to have differing opinions and be okay with it. When's the last time you saw a break in the Republican caucus or people voting against or this and that? It just doesn't happen. They're very much in lockstep. They're very, I would say, controlled. And I think we like to give people a little more freedom to move about, vote their conscience, vote their constituency. And sometimes that aligns with the bigger picture and sometimes it doesn't. I think one of the key parts is that, folks who are folks who have voted against, or voted to overturn the veto, in many cases, in most cases, we knew that going in. And I think that's a big part of that. We're not going to harangue you. And, we might have a conversation, try to argue the other point to get you to the other, the different vote. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, you know what? It's your vote. And, and it's your responsibility. And you're going to vote the way you're going to vote. But you're still a member of the caucus. You're still a Democrat. And you're still welcome here.
Do you, in talking when the Senate session on Tuesday, reporters talking to Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch, who shared her, criticism of Democrats, primarily Representative Carly Cunningham in the House for her comments that she had made about immigration, and Batch had mentioned primarying. Already thinking ahead to that, is that I don't know on the House side if people are already thinking about primaries or trying to, bring in someone else or to replace a different Democrat, or if it's more about flipping a district that's currently Republican and already thinking about next session. Or I know it's early for campaign talk, but it's still out there.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people who, in the heat of the moment, following yesterday was a rough day of session, that people are frustrated, people are angry, maybe people don't know the whole story and might spout off. But when's filing? In December?
Right.
So we got a little ways to go.
Are you going to run for re-election?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first, folks.
I'm absolutely running for re-election.
Okay. Was there any of the veto overrides or any of the other legislation that passes, or anything that you were particularly interested in? Either, you didn't want it to happen, or you did, and just maybe it impacts your district more, or just your own thoughts on it? Does any of it stand out?
Well, I mean, so the district I represent now is very different than the district I represented historically. My old district leaned Republican by about 6 points, and my new one leans Democratic by infinite. And so, I need to. My values and my beliefs haven't changed. Maybe the way I talk about things has a little bit, but with the bills that we had and that were overturned. I think my biggest concern was 266, was the energy bill. When I think about the steps that Buncombe County and the city of Asheville have taken for their climate goals, and I think about, some of the challenges we've had with, power consistency and things like that, that changing some of these things is rolling back basically what I see this as is a rollback of 954. And it's sort of we all came together and agreed to 954 a couple of years ago, and that was the deal. And now I feel like Duke is coming back for a second bite at the apple, and I don't think that's right. And so 266 is, I think, the big one for my district.
Do you think there's going to be a future deal the way the energy bill under Cooper, was kind of a deal that came together over time between both sides?
I hope so. I mean, look, we had Helene, we had Chantal. And regardless of the cause, the climate is changing. And so we need to be rethinking our power sources, our infrastructure, our resilience, and 266 undoes a lot of that.
Well, you mentioned Helene. Let's talk about Helene then in Western North Carolina. What are you seeing back in your district? What remaining needs are there? How is recovery going for businesses, for people, everything?
Well, I think that we need small business grants. We needed small business grants 6 months ago. And I think every time someone spouts off and says, you can't do small business grants because the emollients clause in the Constitution, I turn and look at the last relief bill and go, we gave direct grants, named them in the last Helene relief bill. How can these two, what is the cognitive dissonance here? We can't give small business grants, but at the same time, we can give direct appropriations to the other private businesses. It doesn't make any sense. So that's number one that we need. Two, I think we need to also make sure that we have the stamina to see this through. I know that there are people who are getting sick of hearing about Helene, and Helene fatigue is real. I get it. And you talked to Zeb Smathers about this, Mayor Smathers, about what he did under Tropical Storm Fred. And he got real scared that people were going to get sick and tired of hearing about Tropical Storm Fred. But we are still billions tens of billions of dollars short of what we need for recovery. So this is something we got to keep going. And, I talked to Representative Pless. He came by my desk today and we talked about the next round of relief. So, we're trying to keep it in the front of everyone's mind. But small business grants, housing recovery are really critical.
All right. I'm going to move on to our picks for headliner of the week. Oh, before I do that, whenever I have a lawmaker, I always ask what your order is in the cafeteria or the legislative snack bar. What do you get? Or do you even eat here? I assume you eat here, but...
I do. I pack my lunch as much as possible. But a lot of times when I eat here, I'm making a salad.
From the salad bar in the cafeteria?
Yeah.
All right. So my headliner is something that we've talked our 20 minutes for about at a time. The state budget, the mini budget, in one of the gaggles, I think with Hall today, someone referred to the federal bill as the mega bill, the mega budget. So this is the way other and opposite, and there'll probably be another bill coming at some point, or maybe in future budgets, to deal with what these federal cuts are really going to mean for North Carolina. And Speaker Hall said that because those dates are further out, and then it's not as much a pressing need. But on the House floor, the mini budget that passed has money for DMV jobs, which I think is top of mind for a lot of people, including me. Everybody has gone through, a lot of the chaos of what the DMV has become. So that actually seems like a solution. As we're recording this, Stein has not signed the bill into law, but it seems like he's probably going to, and maybe by the time you all are listening, it would be in effect. But it's these step increase raises for teachers and any state employee that's on the step increases. That's not automatic. The legislature actually has to approve those each time. So that's kind of a built-in raise that people think they would have, but unless it gets that approval, it's not there. And then the budget talks continue, including in an unrelated driver's license bill that had a little more money that top budget writer Representative Johnny Lameth had mentioned was just the vehicle, no pun intended, to get more of that money. So that's my headliner is the budget. What is your headliner of the week, or this very short legislative week?
Well, I do want to say I'm psyched for the Commissioner Paul Tyne. Paul and I served in the House together for a term, and so I'm excited to have him in that job. I think he's going to do well. So shout out to Paul. My headliner is the 6 bills that didn't get brought up in the House for veto overrides. Mm-hmm. Speaker Hall said, I think yesterday, he's going to get to 72 votes honestly. Mm-hmm. And I hope that that's true. And I will believe him into that statement. I've been here on occasions when things have not gone that way. I think that we didn't vote on those because he doesn't have 72.
Right. This would be the getting rid of the concealed carry permit law and then 3 anti-DI bills.
Yes. So I think that's my headliner is, okay, some Democrats went and voted to overturn these vetoes, but the Speaker knew he didn't have the votes on these 6. And I think that's my headline. Mm-hmm.
So Hall told reporters that he's going to keep it on the calendar. It was on the calendar dashboard Wednesday and will be until they have the votes. And he said that he's not interested in primarying. So to go back to that, Republicans that have broken. So we'll see what the absences turn out, and a lot of pressure to be here when there are those voting sessions the rest of the year.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Representative Turner, for being on. And we'll have another dome for you every week. The legislature will be back in another month, and maybe there'll be another budget. Then we'll find out. So, all right. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan with Representative Brian Turner and producer Laura Brache. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Sign up for our political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.